Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasts.
Setting off into nature on your own can be both exhilarating and terrifying. Still, there is a peacefulness to being utterly alone. You don't have to worry about what others are doing. You don't have to worry about where they're going, if they know where they're going, or how they're handling the train, the heat, the cold, anything that comes your way. The only person you have to account for is yourself. The worries fall away and responsibilities ebb, leaving the path for peace and quiet wide open. But what being on your own also means is if things go wrong, there's no one to lean on, no one to help you, no one to call. Minor situations can turn bad in the blink of an eye, and those bad situations can become a death sentence if you aren't careful, prepared. Joshua Tree National Park is a stunning yet harsh environment. And on a late spring day in 2018, the weather was perfect for an early morning hike. It being a Tuesday meant that there were very few people on the trail. Yet, it isn't until Clair Nelson found herself injured that she realized she wasn't on the trail at all. For days, she was absolutely alone, having her adventure turned into less of a fight for survival and more of a waiting game. It was these days that she spent alone that she really learned just how badly things can go. Welcome back to Tragedy with a View. Hello, welcome back. I am your host, Kayla, and this is just episodes that I'm excited to bring you over and over again, and I'm glad to be here. I'm glad you are here. And very quickly, I said this in last week's episode, but last week's episode was a subscriber-only episode, and so I'm going to repeat what I said in that episode here, just so that way everyone else can hear it too. And of course it has to do with the current state of America and the violence that seems to be everywhere. And I want to tell you along with those things that if you haven't figured out by now, I fully believe that the things that we are seeing going on in the news today. So for example, ICE is just one of the many things, right? But ICE is a big talking point right now. They've been around for many years, and it really wasn't until now that we've been seeing them in the news and they've been talked about. And I want to make sure that everyone knows that I do not support what is currently happening. I think some of these things have been happening behind closed doors for far longer than we are aware of. And that is a tragedy in and of itself. But the things that we are seeing currently where situations are not being de-escalated appropriately and people are being shot in the face or the back of the head is inappropriate and unacceptable. And I am taking my own actions behind the scenes. I'm not a super forthcoming person with recording myself talking or leaving messages for senators. That's just not who I am as a person. But I believe that you should take action and support the causes that you find worthy of supporting. And you do not have to tell every single person about it. You don't have to post it on social media. Just do the damn thing. But that also means that because social media is so prevalent in today's society, there's a lot of things that you are seeing online that you wouldn't see otherwise. It's something, that the media can kind of censor in a way that social media just doesn't do. So it makes things feel so much worse. And because of that, I also want to say that even though there's this big push, this big drive to, like rally together, you don't look away. You watch the videos and you watch the content that is being put out there and you see the reality of what certain people's lives are. I also think it's crucial for you to prioritize your mental health. And if that means turning off your phone and getting off social media and getting off the news and looking away, I am in support of that too. I want you to prioritize your mental health for not only yourself, but for your family, for your friends, for your community. That's going to be a bigger impact than anything else, because then you're able to move from a stable place rather than either overly emotional drive where you're acting out of character for yourself, or you're just completely numb to the situation. I want you to have the appropriate reactions to things for yourself. And I am a huge proponent of stepping away from social media when things are feeling overwhelming. And I hope that you are too. And I wanted to bring this up because I am especially aware that many of these stories that I'm bringing you each and every week, especially right now that we're in the Girl Gone Running space, many of these stories are the worst days of a person or a group of people's lives. Like, they're some of the worst experiences that a person can have. And I am aware of that. And I do my best to be kind and respectful through my storytelling. But in conjunction with how negative the headspace seems to be with people in America right now, there's just a lot happening. If you find yourself in a space where you're like, I can't listen to this today, I am in support of that. As always, I want you to prioritize yourself. Selfishly, I want you to listen to my podcast because that is beneficial for me. It's beneficial for my podcast. It helps me grow. It helps me continue to grow. It helps me bring in money so that way at the end of the year, we can make a bigger impact by donating that money. And so selfishly, I do want you to be here. I do want you to be listening. I want you to talk about these episodes and share these episodes and talk to me about these episodes. But if you need to put your mental health first, and that means stepping away from these terrible stories and the terrible news and everything that is kind of going along with that, if you find that you need to listen to music or nothing, or a podcast that is about happy things, please do that. Come back when you're ready. I will be here. I will have several episodes at that point for you to binge. For everyone who is here, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate you. And I hope that you find the good things in your life. So now that I've rambled, I think I rambled for like 5 minutes in the last episode. I rambled for like 7 minutes here. Moving on to the episode, Joshua Tree is a one-of-a-kind area. It is known for its Joshua trees. These Joshua trees are iconic trees that are similar to succulents that are native to the area. They grow slowly, but they reach heights between 20 and 40 feet. And they have these huge fibery trunks. They've got spiky leaves and branches that just kind of sprout out wherever they want to. So each and every tree is very, very unique. Located in the Mojave Desert, sage and juniper bushes are another common sight, as well as the pink sunrises and pink sunsets. There's endless miles of brush-covered desert that eventually meet up with one of 6 different mountain ranges. Those mountain ranges are Little San Bernardino, Cottonwood, Hexie, Pinot, Eagle, or the Coxcomb mountain ranges. Clair Nelson knew how incredible this area was, and when she found herself house-sitting nearby for a couple of friends, she decided to take advantage of the proximity and the fact that she had pretty much an entire week to just explore the park. Claire worked as an editor for a food magazine and had previously been a journalist in London for over 10 years. She grew up in New Zealand and always kind of imagined herself as having an exciting life. And that is exactly what she got. She got to go to expensive restaurants, dress up in fancy clothes, take photos of these immaculate meals. And maybe this is what she had imagined, but as she lived out the real thing, she found herself less and less happy until finally, at 35 years old, she just decided to leave that life behind. Claire first moved to Canada and she was working as a freelance writer and exploring the vastly different environment than what she was used to. It was during this time that she was traveling around and getting out in nature and learning what she really wanted out of life that a prior roommate reached out to her and essentially said that her and her partner were leaving for a wedding, and they asked Claire to come house sit and take care of their cats for 3 weeks. And Claire, of course, said yes. On Tuesday, May 22nd, she planned to go hike the Lost Palms Oasis Trail, which is a moderate 7-mile out and back style hike and leads to a cluster of California palms. It is a pretty popular trail, so she picked a Tuesday to try to kind of be away from the crowds. She wanted to be on her own here. And it is easy to see that based on her actions. In late May, the temperatures already soar into the 80s and 90 degree Fahrenheit or 29 to 32 degrees Celsius. But during the night when the sun sinks below the horizon, the temperatures plunge to 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 to 15 degrees Celsius. Under normal conditions, it is hottest from around 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., and then the temperature starts to drop. It is recommended that you dress in layers, preparing for both sun exposure and the dry, cold desert nights. Claire was well aware of this and actually planned to start early so that way she could be done with the hike by midday, so that way she could stay out of the really hot heat that she knew was coming. Along with the heat, though, is the direct sunlight, which presents its own form of challenges. And so she was like, okay, we're going to avoid this stuff by starting out at like 7 a.m. She got to the trail, or what she thought was the trail, or what she thought was the trailhead, and immediately just started having problems. She was having a hard time finding the actual trailhead. And how are you supposed to hike this super popular trail when you can't even find it? But this did not deter her. And she didn't do what you might think she did, because here on Tragedy with a View, you might assume that she just started walking and figured that she would find the trail as she moved along, but that isn't the case. Claire was smart and she decided to stop at the ranger station with the visitor center for directions. While she was there, she even took her questions a step farther and asked about the trail conditions and if there was anything that she needed to be aware of. The only thing that was mentioned was that there was a little bit of scrambling required at one point on the trail, and that it was going to be really hot. So they recommended that she bring plenty of water. So scrambling when it comes to hiking is where the terrain isn't quite good enough to just walk it. In many cases, it is a rough area of terrain where a person may need to use their hands for balance while climbing up, or when climbing down, you should expect a little bit of kind of your feet sliding around on the loose rocks and dirt. As far as the water goes, Claire had 5 liters of water with her, so she felt like this was fine. And the ranger even told her that that was great. And so the recommended amount, at least for Claire, was like 1 liter per hour. And so since she was expecting this to be a 4-hour hike, she even had like more water than what they recommended you bring. So even though she was starting off later in the day than she anticipated, she was still prepared and she was giddy about getting out there and just being in her own space. Claire embodies Leanne Womack's song, I Hope You Dance, and specifically the line where it says, I hope you still feel small when you stand beside the ocean. There is just something about being in this vast open terrain that makes her feel insignificant, and she loves that feeling. To start the hike, there's an overlook from like kind of the start of the trail that overlooks the valley below, and it just spans out from you. It is less like the Lion King where there's savanna that stretches out, and more like looking at all of this terrain and elevation changes and the rock and the trees and the landscape. It is as she starts this hike and she is alone on the trail that she begins to really feel that happiness bubble up in her. As she is walking, she is really thankful for all of the things in her life that led her to this moment where she's able to just fully immerse herself in nature and let her guard down. It is as she is walking along this trail, she has hiking poles in her hands, so they are clinking against the ground as she goes, that she comes to a point where the trail just kind of seems to stop. There are massive boulders in front of her, and while it does give her a pause, she then remembers that the ranger said that there was a point where she would need to scramble a bit, so she figures that this must be that point, and she starts climbing up over these boulders. The climb up is not really difficult, and from the top, she can see the pure nature just stretching out for what seems to be forever. There are rocks and smatterings of trees, cliffs, and valleys, and Claire just sits down for a moment and just takes it all in. Again, she is just feeling extremely blessed to be able to do this, and before long, she starts thinking about how the day is only going to get hotter. She already had a late start, so she gets up and starts moving down the other side of these rocks. There was a large flat rock that she was needing to kind of hurdle over in order to go down, and for the most part, it was very smooth. She found a foothold that she was able to get kind of her heel into, and she tested that hold to make sure that it would hold her weight before she full body moved on it. And it held. So then she put a little bit more weight into that heel and it held again. And so what her plan was to get her foot wedged in this foothold, which she already did. And then she was going to kind of press up and swing her leg over, almost like when you're getting on the back of a horse. And I need to clarify real quick. This foothold is not like a little ledge or an indent or a knob or something that's protruding from the rock. It's kind of like this little divot in the flat face of the stone, which, foreshadowing, could very easily not maintain traction of the sole of a boot or a shoe. And unfortunately for Claire, that is exactly what happens. As she realizes that her foot had slipped from this hold, she's mid-swing with her leg going over the rock. She realizes a few things all at the same time. One, she's falling. Two, there's really nothing to stop her fall. And three, she is still holding on to her hiking poles in her hands. So as she's scrambling to try to grab things, they're kind of getting in her way. There's a moment of real, actual scrambling before she blacks out. When Claire comes back to, she doesn't fully remember the fall, but she does remember hearing a crack upon landing. And she's looking up at the rock that she fell from about 25 feet in the air. She had landed on this clear-ish space of ground. And what I mean by that is that there weren't any trees or bushes or large rocks, but it was gravelly and stony beneath her. And she was kind of down inside this group of rocks. So she has no way to kind of just get up and walk out. She would have to climb out of where she fell into. She landed on her left side, but then immediately rolled onto her back. And she's just staring towards the sky and just kind of trying to take inventory of her injuries. She isn't feeling pain immediately, but she can't move her legs. So she's kind of comprehending this. She is aware that she can wiggle her toes and move her arms. So she's okay, I'm not paralyzed, but clearly something is wrong with my pelvis because she could not move her legs. And she was completely correct. From the impact on her left side, the left side of her pelvis actually shattered. It is as she starts trying to move a bit that the pain begins to creep in, and she finds that if she moves too much, the pain just rockets through her and she can't even prop herself up on her elbows. She's in so much pain shifting that much weight down into her pelvis. This aloneness that she craved so badly was now becoming a prison sentence. Claire was hiking on her own. She fell on her own. She pulls out her cell phone and finds that there is no service. And just as these things are dawning on her, she remembers that she failed to let anyone know her plans, that she was intending to go hiking today. By this point, it is about 11 a.m., so she's been out for about 2 hours. And this is a popular trail, so she resigns to just wait for someone else to cross her path. She can't imagine that it would take that long. And as she waits, emotions start to bubble to the surface. She is hurting. She is alone. She is mad. She is thinking about the fact that she used to pin the blame on the people who would go hiking and fail to communicate their plans and then ended up getting hurt. And she suddenly finds herself in this exact same situation. So she's kind of beating herself up about this. And I mean, this could happen to anyone, right? Like we all pass judgment at some point, and then usually we find ourselves in the same situation that we are passing judgment on. And so it's just, keeping us humble, right? Many of us don't give coming home a second thought when we set out on the trail. And when it comes to the sheer numbers of people who go hiking in our national parks every single year, the vast majority of them return home, safe, sound, uninjured. So it's easy to get complacent in safety practices. Claire is stuck here, and to pass the time, she starts searching through her phone for any way that she would be able to alert someone that she is there when they come down the trail. In doing so, she opens her Maps app on her iPhone, and she sees her location light up with the blue dot. She also happens to notice a trail kind of near her, and upon zooming in, she is horrified to realize that that is the trail that she was supposed to be on, the trail that she somehow deviated from and was now at least a mile from at this point. She is just now realizing that no one is going to happen upon her. No one is just going to find her on accident. No one is going to be hiking down the Lost Palms Oasis Trail and find her because she is nowhere close to the trail. Instead of sinking into what could doom her, though, Claire rises to the occasion and starts to figure out what she needs to do to just survive. Step one was to protect herself from the sun. She didn't have a lot of options, so she just slathered on sunscreen as best she could, using the walking stick to reach her legs, and then holding her hat between her face and the sun. She then goes through her bag and figures out what all she has. She has over half of her water left. There's some snacks, a very, very small first aid kit, which will do nothing to help her shattered pelvis, a couple of Tylenol pills, and her camera. She takes out her camera and starts to record, and I'm going to play just a couple of quick sections for you now.
The shattered pelvis. In the desert. I might die here, and I'm really scared that that's the case, and I don't know what to do. I can't get a signal out here. I call for help, and no one's out here. This is the stupidest thing I've ever done. I tried to roll myself over into that little shady alcove. I almost got there. As soon as I managed to kind of lever my pelvis over, you hear this click, 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 crunch, 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 and then the noise that came out of me, I swear to God. And then, of course, I had to roll back over and nearly passed out. I don't want to pass out in the sun or ever, and I'll wake up again.
So as you can tell, she is realizing that she has no idea how long she might be here or what condition she will be in when someone finally does find her. So she just wants people to know what happened. She wants her family to have answers. And we have covered this many times. People, when they realize that they might die, they just want to provide some form of communication and closure for those that they love. It was as the sun began to set that Claire realized that she was truly going to be here for the night, and she would have to survive the night, and that was more terrifying than everything else she had dealt with so far. And I can relate. The noises that nature makes sound different and a whole lot more like just like doom is setting in. in the dark. For Claire, she had this irrational fear that was coming from the thought of snakes, and she rationally was realizing that the desert got cold at night. The snakes were not going to be coming out. They weren't going to be super active, but still any sound that she heard, she was just tensing with fear and immediately thinking of snakes. Not only that, but the temperature dropped low enough that she was shivering, which caused her a lot of pain. She didn't have enough layers to stay warm, let alone the ability to move her body to warm up that way. By morning, as the sunlight began to creep across the rocks, it reawakened hope that today was going to be the day that someone would find her and she would get out of this mess that she got herself in. Instead, her phone's battery died. The sun creeps higher and higher in the sky, bringing with it unbearable heat and less water, until she finally runs out. It was that same morning, though, that she realizes that she is already dehydrated. Her lips are chapped, her throat was sore and dry. Claire already was kind of trying to collect her urine. It started as a way to keep her human scent to a minimum and just kind of keep herself clean. But then as the water got lower and lower, she began to contemplate drinking her urine more and more. Now, there are circumstances where you don't want to do this. There's actually pretty much 100% of the time, if you're in the survival situation, you don't want to do this. Urine is your body's way of collecting and carrying toxins out of your body and extra salts and whatnot. So ingesting that again is just returning them in a higher concentration than what you originally took them in at. At some point, your kidney and liver can no longer filter out these toxins that you are consuming, and also creating the body creates its own things that it needs to get rid of, right? So in a survival situation, it is never recommended to drink your own urine anymore. I know at one point that was a common thing, but still Claire is just kind of acting on instinct at this point, and she feels like she needs water, and that is the only liquid that she has. Besides that, she is able to build a small shelter using her walking stick, and then there was another stick that was laying nearby along with a plastic bag. So she uses the walking stick and the stick that she found. She ties them together with a hair tie and then uses the plastic bag over that to kind of create a little bit of a shady shelter. That same afternoon, she decides to see if it would be possible to self-rescue. And so she's thinking, maybe I can roll over onto my belly and just drag myself out of there. But she quickly realizes that this was not going to work when the pain of rolling over almost causes her to pass out. By the time the sun began to set on the second day, hope was really fading. The thought that no one was coming circled around her head and eventually took over her thoughts, and that was what kept her company during the time that she was awake the second night. When the sun came up on Thursday, her third day stuck here, she decided that she needed to look on the bright side. It was Thursday. That meant that it was nearly the weekend, which meant that more people were going to be out here, and she was just really hopeful that she would finally be rescued. But her body is giving out. She is hallucinating the sounds of helicopters and ambulances. These hallucinations roll all the way into the third night. The third night, something mentally shifts for her. She is no longer fearful, and she is just kind of having the thought that if she were to die in Joshua Tree, it wouldn't be so bad. It was a beautiful park, and she was lucky to have gotten to visit it. She is also lucky to have died doing something that she loves. So this concept of potentially not being rescued has now shifted from oh no, I'm going to die out here, to not a bad place to go. On the fourth day, she wakes up to the sun having already risen up in the sky, and her first thought upon waking up is, quote, "Oh, I'm still here." All of her fight to live, to survive, all of her hope is just gone at this point. She was weak and tired. She is starving. She's dehydrated. She's got an immense amount of pain going on due to her shattered pelvis. So she's just kind of laying here, kind of coming in and out of consciousness. The sun is absolutely relentless as it blazes down on her. And she is weak enough that she doesn't even have the motivation to hold up the little stick bag shelter anymore. All of the back and forth between temperatures, how much her body has to work in order to regulate it, the lack of food, the sheer amount of pain she's in, like everything is catching up to her. It is at one point that she hears voices and she's like, that's a new hallucination. And then she kind of like passes out again. But when she comes back to, she hears what sounds like a helicopter. And again, she's not like taking the sound seriously. The helicopter gets closer and the voices get closer. And she's laying there thinking like, this is weird. And then she hears someone say over a loudspeaker that they are looking for a missing hiker. And she's like, wait, is that me? Is there somebody else that's missing out here? Like, oh no, there's somebody else that's missing out here. And she kind of like goes back and forth on this for a second until they finally say her name. And she's like, they're looking for me. So again, she's kind of down inside of this circle of boulders, so they can't just see her by looking across the ground. So she decides that she's going to take her shirt off and tie it to the end of her walking stick and hold that up and try to wave it around so that way maybe they can see her that way, which is what helped the Riverside County Sheriff's helicopter finally spot her. Claire had gotten so far off the trail that it took the two search and rescuers an hour to figure out how to get down to her. And then it took a few more hours before they actually had a plan for getting her out. They were actually shocked to even find her alive. They for sure thought that they were recovering a body. Once Claire was extracted from this circle of boulders, they literally walked the litter over to the trail and then took the trail to a place where they were able to load her up on a helicopter. And once at the hospital, Claire is being treated for her dehydration, her pain, and she starts to piece together how they found her because her mom ends up calling her at the hospital. Her mom back in New Zealand had not been able to get a hold of her for a couple of days, and she's able to get in contact with the friends who owned the house, and they also said that they weren't able to get a hold of her. And so they finally called police who went by the house to check on her, and they found that the cat litter boxes hadn't been cleaned for a few days, which was like the first clue that something was wrong. While they were looking through the house, they ended up finding a paper calendar that Claire had where she had written the Lost Palms Oasis Trail on Tuesday. And so at that point, they called search and rescue because that's the only lead they had to go on. Claire was in the Desert Regional Medical Center in Palm Springs, California for 18 days, where she had 2 pins placed in her pelvis. She was treated for a broken toe and a badly sprained ankle, along with needing tons of fluid for 2 weeks in order to bring her back to baseline. She actually should have been there longer, but the insurance that she had declined to cover her for more than $20,000, which really only covered the first day of her care. Upon release, she first moved in with a friend before she returned to Canada with her mom, who was going to help care for her while there. And they stayed there for 2 months before she was finally good enough to handle the trip back home to New Zealand. While Claire has many takeaways from this experience, the most prominent ones are these. You get one life. You should not let what others think of you dictate the direction of that life. The only person's judgment that you need to live with is your own. The other takeaway is that while fears are a normal and expected part of life, you should never let them decide what you are going to go after. A few years later, Claire returns to Joshua Tree, this time with friends in tow, to hike the Lost Palms Oasis Trail. She has moments of awe as she hikes with them and is even able to recognize the exact spot where she deviated from the real trail, without knowing it, of course. During their hike, they talked over how this hike and the memory of Claire's experience could have been very different. The hike could have been done in the memory of Claire rather than how she endured it. It is the very fact that she was reliable to her friends and her family that alerted them to that something was wrong, and their insistence to find her despite being a world away. Sources for this episode include Outside Magazine, Wanderlog.com, the National Park Service, and abc.net. Thank you for listening. If you want to support this show or any other shows that you love, please take a moment to rate or review this show wherever you listen to podcasts. And hitting that share button goes a long way. A bigger way to support this show is by subscribing on Patreon for as little as $1.99. Patreon includes 3 separate tiers to choose from, or on Spotify or Apple subscriptions starting at $4.99 to access exclusive content that no one else will ever get. Your support means so much to a small creator and host like me, and I truly can't describe how happy your support makes me. Please don't forget to follow on Facebook or Instagram, and if you have a tale of your own, whether that be an incredible experience or one that you feel like you dodged a bullet while on the trails, please email them to me at tragedywithaview@gmail.com. I hope to put together some listener episodes in the future, but don't worry, they're not going to become the prominent content of this podcast. Until then, thank you so much. We will talk next week. Bye.